I mean,
there's that.
Ed, we can't erase that, Ed. We have a lot of moving pieces this morning as the Trump administration continues to take shape. The president-elect filling 3 of the more important jobs in keeping America safe and protecting rule of law. This as we watch who is heading in and out of Trump Tower again today. Welcome to Friday, everybody. We've made it. I'm Bill Hemmer, live here in America's News. That's the place to be, huh?
It is. It's a spectator sport in the city. It's the best one, better than the U.S. Open. Good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. Glad to have you with us on this Friday morning. So let's talk about what's going on here. The president-elect offering the White House National Security Advisor job, chief of the NSA, they call it, to retired Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Republican Senator Jeff Sessions is tapped for the job of Attorney General. Been a lot of speculation about that position. And how about this one? GOP Congressman Mike Pompeo getting the nod for CIA Director.
Meanwhile, Mr. Trump also looking to make peace with one of his fiercest Republican critics during the primaries. He will meet with Mitt Romney 8 months after one of the more bitter public disputes that we have seen in memory.
Doug McKelway joins us live from outside Trump Tower here in New York City. So, Doug, talk to us about how these 3 individuals are perceived politically.
Well, they are not moderates. These 3 picks, if they prove to be true, are not moderate at all. And if it's an indication of what's to come in other cabinet picks, we're looking at a very, very conservative administration indeed. Fox now confirming that Alabama junior senator and former Reagan-era U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Alabama, Jeff Sessions, is going to be his pick for Attorney General. Whether or not he accepts the pick, we don't yet know. He was ranked by National Journal as the 5th most conservative senator. Sessions, if confirmed, would likely revamp what critics believe is the most politicized Department of Justice in modern history. But his nomination will not be without controversy. 4 former Justice Department lawyers testified at his confirmation hearing for a U.S. attorney many years ago that he had made racially insensitive remarks. Thomas Figures, who was a black assistant U.S. attorney, testified that Sessions said he thought that the Ku Klux Klan was, quote, okay until I found out they smoked pot. Well, Sessions later said that comment was not serious. He said it was a joke, but he nevertheless apologized for it. Another pick, Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo for CIA chief, the Harvard Law School graduate and former Tea Party member, will also come under intense scrutiny from Senate Democrats. He apologized for a 2010 article from an independent publication that his campaign tweeted out. It said that Pompeo's then opponent, an Indian American, was a turban topper who could be a Muslim, a Hindu, a Buddhist, who knows. Again, he apologized for it. They were not Pompeo's words. It appeared in a publication that his campaign tweeted out. National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Mike Flynn will not face such scrutiny, although many leftists consider his views on radical Islamic terror to be too extreme. The NSA position is not subject to confirmation. Again, all these picks show that Trump is moving in a very conservative direction, something that many of his critics said he was not capable of.
All right. We're going to be hearing both sides of the arguments in favor of and against these gentlemen over the course of the next few weeks. And what about the meeting with Mitt Romney? Fascinating how all of this is playing out. They have had, quite a few harsh words between the 2 men, but they're going to get together, right?
They're going to get together. This is another example of Donald Trump reaching out to make amends or some hope of a reconciliation to former critics. But this is really pretty remarkable. This meeting is going to take place tomorrow at the Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey. We'll be there for that, so we'll keep a close eye on it. There are suggestions that Mr. Romney is up for the Secretary of State job. But listen to what Romney said in that speech before Trump got the nomination, encouraging Americans not to accept his nomination. He said that if Trump's plans were ever implemented, the country would sink into a prolonged recession. So apparently Mitt Romney has had a change of heart. He has said that this is in the interest of supporting the president, in the interest of supporting the United States of America. It may also be in the interest of furthering his own career. We shall see, Martha.
We shall see. All right, Doug, thank you.
Let's get more on all this now with these quickly moving developments. Guy Benson, political editor for townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Guy, good morning to you there in Washington, D.C.
Hi, Bill.
It's a changing town, right? What about the Romney meeting? Just start there. What are you picking up on that?
Well, I think it's fascinating, as Doug just laid out. This was one of the fiercest critics of Donald Trump throughout the entire election cycle, dinging him on taxes, dinging him on policy, dinging him on foreign policy, and now apparently in consideration for the Secretary of State spot, as many people apparently are, And he's a capable guy, Mitt Romney, certainly. But Bill, one thing that I heard last night that's interesting to me, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. It's a little bit outside the box, but what about Mitt Romney at the VA? Yes, he's not a veteran, but what's his specialty? He's a turnaround artist. Whether it's businesses or the Olympics, he takes big, struggling entities and whips them into shape. We all know the VA needs that. It was a point of emphasis for Donald Trump on the campaign trail. I think Mitt Romney going in and managing the heck out of the VA and fixing it, that could be an interesting idea. I hope they discuss it.
This is going to get a lot of attention in the next 24 hours. The speech from last March in Utah when Governor Romney said this about Donald Trump.
He inherited his business. He didn't create it. And whatever happened to Trump Airlines? How about Trump University? And then there's Trump Magazine, and Trump Vodka, and Trump Steaks, and Trump Mortgage. A business genius he is not.
I went back and looked at that speech earlier today. Wow. I mean, he just guts Donald Trump in line after line. That was only 8 months ago, Guy.
Yeah, brutal. And then, of course, Donald Trump firing back, saying Mitt Romney blew an easy election. He choked like a dog. And now they'll be sitting face to face in New Jersey this weekend talking about possibly working together. And look, I think that, first of all, winning helps a lot of things. People start to feel better. And Mitt Romney, he has no future career ambitions. He has nothing to prove, but he wants to help the country. And I think it's a good move, smart for Donald Trump to reach out the way that he has, and the right thing for Mitt Romney to accept and show up.
Okay, more headlines from today. What do you make of Mike Pompeo? You are familiar with him, CIA. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I've interviewed him a couple times, filling in for my friend Hugh Hewitt on the radio. I mean, his resume is so impressive. Very, very smart, a veteran, Harvard Law. I think that he's well suited for the position. I think it's a good pick. Doug talked about in that previous package some of the controversies. You can find controversies about anyone who's ever been in public life. Overall, I think Pompeo, sharp guy, good pick.
Okay, Jeff Sessions. My sense is if he accepts the nomination, the mainstream media is going to make a big deal out of his pursuit of a federal judgeship back in 1986, a position that he later withdrew his name.
Right, 30 years ago. And Sessions been in the public spotlight in multiple capacities and very prominently as a senator for a long time. I think that because he made what many perceive as racially insensitive jokes back in the day, he will be asked about it. He will have to answer for that and explain and apologize or whatever he's going to do. But it would be surprising to see it derail his nomination if he's picked. Although, again, you have to keep an eye early on about the type of signals the Trump administration might be sending. But again, Sessions, the earliest member of Congress, the earliest senator at least, to sign on to the Trump train. And so he's being rewarded.
And it was Chris Collins on the House side, too, from New York. Guy, thank you. Guy Benson there in Washington, D.C. First, the economy. If Donald Trump's plans were ever implemented, the country would sink into a prolonged recession. Who said that?
I'm going to go with Mitt Romney for 5.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
So that was from March.
I think a couple things are very clear. One is that when Mitt Romney said those things, he firmly believed that Donald Trump would never become president of the United States. And two, something to remember is that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama had very harsh words for each other throughout the course of their very nasty campaign and managed to patch things up. So we will see.
Onward.
Right? We'll see. So President Obama coming together with key European allies this morning to talk about the U.S. transition to President-elect Donald Trump. He is meeting with leaders of Germany, Britain, and France, very important allies, of course. It is likely the last meeting of its kind before he leaves his office in January. White House correspondent Kevin Corke is live in Berlin, Germany, traveling with the president this morning. Good morning to you, Kevin.
Hey, great to talk to you, Martha. You're right. Big difference between yesterday's meeting with Angela Merkel and the entire group of European leaders. Frankly, security dynamics is at focus because, yes, it's easy to talk about the economies of the U.S. and Germany, but let's face it, terrorism's not some abstract here. It's not on the doorstep. It's actually here, which makes that all the more important in the conversation today. And so the president meeting with those leaders, as you pointed out, working collectively, they say, on a transatlantic agenda to not only fight terrorism, but also to do what they can to stabilize the Middle East, North Africa, as well as looking for diplomatic solutions for the ongoing conflicts in Syria and Ukraine. The president also was interviewed by German public broadcaster ARD and Der Spiegel, and he told them why he thought President-elect Trump's message resonated in the campaign with so many people.
In some rural areas, particularly those that were reliant on manufacturing, there has been weaker growth, stagnation, people feeling as if their children won't do as well as they will. Trump was able to tap into some of those anxieties.
Interesting in that conversation, Martha, the president pointing out that a lot of the people that voted for him in 08 and 12 also voted for Donald Trump, in part because they were looking simply for change and to shake things up in Washington.
Yeah,
Martha.
That is one of the big lessons from the election. Kevin, thank you.
We'll be keeping an eye on Trump Tower all morning long. We know Katie McFarland is also having another meeting today at Trump Tower, so we'll let you know what comes of that when we get it. First, though, was a big campaign push for Donald Trump, keeping jobs here at home. Why one major American car company says it will keep a plant open in the U.S. instead of moving to Mexico. More on that in a moment.
And Nancy Pelosi has been a fixture on Capitol Hill for a very long time, but now she faces a legitimate challenge. So what is next for her? What's next for the Democratic Party?
Also, Mike Pence was on the Hill promising lightning fast progress after Inauguration Day. So can the administration bank on Congress getting on board that speed?
We talked about going to work. He described President Trump as a man of action, and we're anxious to go to work both on the transition and getting people in place as well as the policies in place.
There are dozens of firefighters battling a fire at a pallet yard in California right now. The fire is shutting down traffic in both directions on a major highway just east of Los Angeles. Crews working to control it. At least 2 power poles have been burned, which is causing several explosions down the line from propane in the yard. And boy, these pictures are just incredible from KABC. That's what it looked like earlier. No word yet on whether anyone was hurt. We'll keep you posted on the work that's going on in California.
Beginning to discuss areas that we might move forward on together, and I think that's what the American people want us to do, is find ways to revive our economy, improve American lives, enhance the security of this nation, and I'm grateful to begin those discussions on behalf of the President-elect with you today.
So there's Mike Pence telling Republicans to buckle up. He says the new administration plans to move quickly through its agenda in the first 100 to 200 days. Juan Williams, Fox News political analyst and author of We the People, and Mercedes Schlapp, former media spokesperson for President George W. Bush. 1 in a million. Mercy, mercy me. So Pence says buckle up, Congress. We're coming at you, Mercy. What do you think?
Well, you know, a unified government can be a very productive time for Congress. As we know, Donald Trump is a doer. He's fast-paced. You know, he barely sleeps. So he's going to move forward and get things done. And I think Congress is going to be incredibly ready here. They're going to move forward, I think, Bill, on obviously Obamacare. We know that parts of the Affordable Care Act is part of this budget, were passed as a part of budget reconciliation. That means they can bypass a filibuster. They don't need that threshold of 60 votes in the Senate. This is going to give Congress an opportunity to move forward and dismantle parts of Obamacare and put forward a better plan from the Republican side.
Juan, what do you make of that? What do you think is the biggest fight ahead?
Well, I think there's an immediate fight. Funding for the government runs out December 9th, Bill, and so they've got to do some short-term work just to keep the government going. The question is, on the Republican side, can we use some maneuvers to really get by that and allow the incoming Trump administration to set the spending levels rather than allow the current Congress and the current administration to be involved in that. And they also want to include in that some provisions that would allow the incoming administration to quickly undo some Obama era regulations. Well, you know, for a lot of Democrats, that's a poison pill. And so you still have Democrats with sufficient numbers in the Senate to mount a filibuster, and I think you're going to see some short-term fireworks as a result.
Okay, all right then. Paul Ryan said this will be the most productive Congress, Mercedes, in a long, long time. That's his quote, insisting that they'll move forward. But it's going to take time, and there could very well be speed bumps.
It will, and those first 18 months are critical. And I have to tell you one thing to look for, are those vulnerable Democrats in red states that are up in 2018. You're going to see them in the Senate willing to work with the Donald Trump administration and with Republicans on issues like Obamacare, on issues like tax reform, and cutting back on regulations. And I think those are going to be the 2 first issues that Congress will tackle. And you're going to see what Donald Trump does. He keeps a checklist of just items that he wants to push through and ensure that we get these lists of accomplishments. And he has the opportunity to do that. The question is, how obstructionist will the Democrats be? I think they're going to be a bit limited, but they still have the opportunity to filibuster in some major ways. administration.
I want to move to the headlines of the morning. Mercedes, what do you make of the pick so far? Sessions, apparently. Mike Pompeo, you know him well. What should we understand about him as CIA
I have to tell
director?
you, these are, there's strong conservative picks. And I have to say, I know Mike Pompeo, he is just incredibly impressive, brilliant, part of the House Intelligence Committee, has a very deep understanding of the serious issues that we're experiencing in the war on terror and terrorism in general and the fight against ISIS. And I think that he's just one of the brilliant picks that Donald Trump has made.
You also have Mike Flynn in that mix. Juan, what do you think?
Well, I think Mike Flynn doesn't need to be confirmed, and I think that's the story there. I think there's lots of concern about Mike Flynn in the intelligence community. I mean, recently, with the WikiLeaks stuff, we saw an email from former Secretary of State Colin Powell that described him as, you know, unhinged. And I think there are lots of people who thought he wasn't a great manager, and that's why he was decided to leave government in the first place. So it's Donald Trump's pick. Let him have his pick. Let him have his man. But he could not be confirmed, in my opinion. And then when it comes to Jeff Sessions, again, you're going to see a lot of controversy. And again, it comes back to race. It comes back to his history, his past, the fact that he didn't get that federal judgeship and then ended up, of course, on Senate Judiciary, now Attorney General. I think there are a lot of people who are just saying, well, I don't know about this.
Well,
but
you know,
ultimately, I think he gets approved.
You do. He does. Okay. A lot of this transition phase deals with running down the trap doors to figure out what could be lying in the road before you. So thank you much to both of you. One in a million. Mercy me. Thanks. Have a great weekend. Okay?
Thank you, Bill.
You got it. Love your nicknames, don't you?
I do. All right. So keeping jobs here in the United States, it's one of the big central focuses for Donald Trump. A big campaign promise, of course. So now he's taking credit for keeping a Ford plant here in the United States. Big news that broke last evening. We'll talk about it with Charles Payne. But first, does this moment ring a bell from the campaign trail?
It's disgraceful. What's going to happen is Ford just announced they're doubling down. They're going to build much more in Mexico. We can't allow it to happen anymore. We're not going to allow it to happen anymore.
This program is brought to you by PXG.
Washington for a moment. Nancy Pelosi will face a Democratic challenger, Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan out of Youngstown, saying that he will put in a bid for House Minority Leader. He'll go after the California Democrat Pelosi's job for the top Democratic position in the House. Ryan making his case in a letter saying the elections were a disaster and that the party needs to take a new direction.
President-elect Donald Trump taking credit for keeping a Ford auto plant here in the United States. He hit the motor company hard on the campaign trail, criticizing Ford for shipping jobs to Mexico. Mr. Trump tweeting, quote, last night around, I don't know, about 8:30, 9 o'clock, just got a call from my friend Bill Ford, chairman of Ford, who advised me that he will be keeping the Lincoln plant in Kentucky. No Mexico, period. And, quote, I worked hard with Bill Ford to keep the Lincoln plant in Kentucky. I owed it to the great state of Kentucky for their confidence in me. Charles Payne joins us now, host of Making Money with Charles Payne on Fox Business Network. So that sounds pretty good.
It does sound pretty good, but the automaker dilemma, Ford and everyone else, still continues. And, you know, one of the things that you're seeing is, here's the thing, just 2 days ago, Mark Fields, the CEO of Ford, said he's still going to move small car production to Mexico because they simply can't make any money on them in this country. And what they're trying to do is take these plants and put other production in there. And you know, I think he'll be able to do that. And these plants won't close. The plants themselves won't move, but some of the production will still shift, I think, in the near term to Mexico.
Is there anything that Donald Trump could do to stop that?
Listen, lower regulations, lower taxes, things like that. Here's one of the ironies no one talks about, though. Mexico has 40 free trade agreements with other countries, so they actually get to ship also those cars duty-free. You know, recently Audi, about a year ago, had to move some production from America because, I don't know if people know, there's a 10% duty on American cars when we ship them to the EU, 22% on pickup trucks. So, you know, and that's one of the ironies.
Mexico can ship them for free.
Well, they have 40 trade agreements, so that's an interesting thing as we push back against trade agreements. You know, I think the idea is ultimately Donald Trump will cut individual deals with these countries or maybe entities, but it does give them an advantage on top, of course, the much cheaper worker.
Yeah, there's also some talk about perhaps Apple bringing some manufacturing here. And I remember a conversation that Steve Jobs wrote about with President Obama. And President Obama said, what do we have to do to get some of these Apple jobs back? And he said, it's never going to happen.
Well, here's the thing. You know, it's so funny how everyone keeps saying the market didn't see Trump winning.
Yeah.
In June, apparently, according to a report from a very reliable source out in Asia, in June, Apple told their major manufacturers of iPhone, mostly Foxconn, to find a way to perhaps make them in America. So really? Why would he do that in June? And they're working on it. They're trying to see if it's feasible, if there's some way. Obviously, it would be extraordinarily more expensive, but you offset that. There are obviously ways to also offset that kind of stuff. And so they're looking into it. There's no doubt that I think that corporate America has got the message. It's not the Donald Trump message. It's the message of the American voter. And I think that they're going to ship up. By the way, NAFTA in of itself, I've already predicted that we're going to get some major concessions on NAFTA almost immediately from Donald Trump. We've seen Canada blinking. He's going to meet with the president of Mexico before the inauguration. I'm not sure how it's going to impact autos, but I think immediately it helps our truckers. I think our truckers are going to get a huge boon for this, because what people don't realize is early last year, Martha, a final phase of NAFTA was put through where Mexican truckers could drive all the way through America with the stuffs. Before, they had to stop at the border, and an American truck driver would pick it up. Those kind of things ripple throughout the country. They never make the headlines in the New York Times, but those are the things that create anxiety, and that's what we saw in this election.
I mean, you can feel a sense of economic relief in the U.S. markets, and you can hear it in the voices of businessmen and women around the country who are optimistic, so hopefully their optimism will be well placed.
I talk about animal spirits a lot. There's one thing. There's one thing to say: lower taxes and lower regulations. That's the mechanical part of it.
Yep.
To spark belief. The guy at the parking garage is excited. He didn't vote for Donald Trump. My brother-in-law in the scrap metal business said business has gone nuts. There is something brewing in this country right now, and a lot of it has to do with November 8th. And Donald Trump could take that baton.
I saw a scrap metal truck in New York the other day with a big spray-painted "Go Trump" on the back. Maybe it was your brother-in-law.
It might have been.
Thank you, Charles.
Good
to see you this morning.
Instincts, Charles?
What's that?
The instincts were what?
Animal spirits.
It's all about animal spirits.
It's in our DNA as Americans. We want to win.
I got it. Right
Truer
on.
words were never spoken.
President-elect Trump now making some big decisions this week about who will serve in his cabinet. This is breaking news this morning. Will any of his former challengers from the primary season make the cut? One of those challengers, Governor Mike Huckabee, is here live in studio in a moment. Next.
We watched the Trump Tower cam this morning, plus the Secret Service making a record-setting counterfeit bust. They rounded up $30 million in fake bills, folks. Where did they make them? You'll be curious to know. We'll be right back.
9:32 Friday morning here in New York City. If you're just joining us, this is the news of the hour right here. Mike Flynn has been nominated and accepted the position of National Security Advisor to the President-elect Donald Trump. Mike Pompeo, the Republican congressman out of Kansas, has accepted the nomination to be CIA director. Jeff Sessions, the Republican senator from Alabama, has accepted the nomination to be the next attorney generals. Number 2 and 3, Pompeo and Sessions will go through a confirmation process in Congress, so we'll stand by for more on that. Flynn does not need it as NSA confirmation through the Senate. In the meantime, we're watching Trump Tower, and we are told that Mr. Trump is going to make a move early this afternoon out to his golf course in New Jersey, Bedminster, New Jersey, 45 miles due west of Manhattan, so we'll wait to see when that happens. And we're told that he will make a victory tour to the states that he won, especially the battleground states that he flipped. Details on those potential rallies and tour stops we don't have right now, but the Trump team's talking about it on the inside. So keep you updated on all that right now as we roll on with Martha here on a Friday.
You can kind of guess which states might be high on the list as places that he would stop. Listen to the buzz in Trump Tower this morning as people come and go out of those elevators, kind of waving to the crowd. This is really the parade of potential members of the Trump administration. We have the understanding that this is a very efficient process, actually, and that they have landing teams that are going to be going to Washington shortly to get people organized in places like the Pentagon. Also on the economic front, the president-elect is making those decisions as we speak. So people are wondering which of the former Republican primary opponents. Remember all of these folks that were up on that stage? A lot of them scrapping at each other throughout the process of all of this. looks like several of them could potentially wind up in the Trump administration, and some appear to have been jettisoned. So former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee was, of course, one of those candidates. He will be meeting with the president-elect today at Trump Tower, and he joins me now. Governor, always good to have you with us.
Well,
good
thank
morning
you, Martha.
to you.
Good morning.
You know, you look at some of those faces up on that screen, many of whom have reached out to the administration. You were an early person to be supportive of Donald Trump. Is there a future in the administration for you?
Well, you know, that's for Donald Trump to decide. And, you know, I always say this, that those who know don't talk, and those who talk don't know. The number one thing that a person has to give...
Let's underline that, shall we?
Well, you know, it's true. And people who rattle on about all that they know about the inside, they don't know what they're talking about. People who actually know something know to keep their mouths shut.
Right.
Because, first of all, there's a loyalty that you owe to whoever it is that is making these decisions. And secondly, leaking out information is the game of amateurs. It's not the game that you play if you're really serious about wanting to have the best people in place.
Can you give us a sense of what your interaction with the transition team has been like? Because there have been a lot of stories about chaos within the team, that Chris Christie, who was one of the people that we put up on that screen, has been bumped aside, that, you know, he may not have a role in the future. What's your sense of who's heading the operation and how it's going?
You know, I mean, if you look at the fact that Donald Trump has named people already far in advance of when Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, you know, George H. Walker Bush, none of those guys had people named this early. Donald Trump is ahead of the game. This nonsense, and I think it's a media creation because of the 24-hour news cycle now, and everybody thinks that he's supposed to have all this done the day after the election when he didn't even sleep that night. It's going fine. I mean, it's a very complicated process to put 4,100 people in positions in a short period of time and ask them to go through an upheaval of this. I think it's, you know, probably doing much better than most previous administrations who were supposedly better prepared for it.
Well, we did get some concrete information today. Mike Pompeo at CIA, Mike Flynn at NSA, and the list goes on. So talk to me a little bit about what you think of the appointments that we heard about today. And Jeff Sessions, I should point out also as well, the senator from Alabama who was an early Trump supporter.
Yeah, Jeff Sessions is one of my very favorite people. Phenomenal senator, plain-spoken, brought clarity to the TPP discussion back when it was going early on. I think it's an amazingly good choice and one that I just given a standing ovation for.
What do you say to those who say, well, when he was, you know, going through the confirmation process a long time ago, there were what were perceived to be racist comments made, and he apologized for those? Is he going to have a difficult time because of that?
My gosh, if everybody is going to be judged by something they said 35 years ago or 40 years ago in an offhand way that really wasn't intended to be harmful, then nobody has a shot at getting confirmed for anything. Jeff Sessions has proven himself as a very effective United States senator. Now, is he conservative? You bet he is. Doesn't that give conservatives a real sense of about Donald Trump's selection? Look at the judges he's already put on the Supreme Court list. For all those, I call them the hand-wringers and bedwetters out there in the Republican Party who said, oh, Donald Trump, we can't trust him, he won't be conservative. Look at what he's doing. He's picking solid conservative people. It speaks well of his process. It speaks well of also the team that he wants to put together.
What about Mike Flynn?
A good man, you know, and again, one of the key things in that job is that the president trusts you. And I think Donald Trump trusts Mike Flynn, and that's the number one quality that he has. He certainly has the credentials. You know, you get that many stars on your shoulder, you've earned the right to be respected, and he certainly does.
Mitt Romney is going to meet with him tomorrow, is what we're told, with the president-elect. I mean, it's just, we played some of what Mitt Romney said in that speech. I mean, Mitt Romney really went out on a limb.
He did.
On that speech. And he pretty much trashed the entire career of Donald Trump. And yet he's someone who has a lot of respect in this country, Mitt Romney. Can these guys put it together?
If Donald Trump thinks he can, then that's his decision to make. I think it's very difficult, given the level of rhetoric. You know, is there a role for Mitt? I don't know. I'm not sure. But look, the number one quality that you bring to any administration in any endeavor is loyalty. And it's a sense of understanding a respect, a healthy, genuine, loyal respect for the person who put you in the job. I always looked at it this way. If somebody did everything they could to keep me from getting a job, do I really want to put them in a job?
But isn't that just part of the game? I mean, isn't that part of what happens in a rough and tumble campaign, that people, you know, shoot across the bow at each other and then they say, truce?
Look, it's perfectly normal in politics to go after each other. But when you start going to the level of saying a person is unfit, unqualified, incapable, now those are words that cross a border. Because it's one thing to say he's not the best person. This person has a weak area on national defense or on health care, on whatever it is you want to pick. That's fair game. When you start going after that person's character, that person's ability to do the job.
But Donald Trump said he choked like a dog in the first election.
All the more reason
and
you wonder,
said that Ted Cruz was lying all the time. But now these are people that he's considering. So then some people look at that and say, you know what? He respects these guys and realizes that they're smart and wants their input.
And that very well may be the case. And if so, then I would have to assume Donald Trump is going to exact out of them some sense of perspective and maybe a public walking of the plank to say, I take back all those nasty things I said, they were untrue and I didn't mean them.
Would you like to be the ambassador to Israel?
You know, I have no comment on anything that the president-elect might present to me, and I don't know that that's my future. I just don't know. That's his decision to make. It's my decision only to process that and decide. But as I said earlier, and I'll stand by it, those who know don't talk. Those who talk don't know.
Governor Huckabee, always good to have you with us, and a good reminder for everybody in this season of mass speculation. But we're getting some concrete stuff too as well, which is helpful. Thank you so much, Governor.
Thank you, Martha.
Great to see you.
That'd be a pretty good line for debate, Governor. Saying. Secret Service making a record haul in counterfeit money, $30 million in bogus currency. That's the most in the agency's history. Wow. Codename Operation Sunset, Secret Service worked with authorities in Peru as they conducted a series of raids in Lima. That capital city is considered a hotbed for counterfeit bucks. 48 people arrested, 6 printing locations have been shut down. And that's why you have new currency every couple of years, right? That's why it always changes, to stay ahead of those guys.
That's why they hold your money up to the light, you know, when you give them the big $20 bill.
Right.
Make sure that thing's okay. I didn't know Peru was known for that. But anyway, so we're keeping an eye, as we have told you, on the lobby, the Trump Tower lobby. I used to go to this place when I was a little girl to see the poinsettias that went all the way up and down the tower inside at Christmas time, and never imagined that it would one day be the place where a presidential transition was taking place. But there you have it. You can see the guards lined up all around the elevator banks there. So we'll keep an eye on that as well this morning.
Also, President Obama overseas, perhaps burned by his own experience, passing on some foreign policy advice to his successor as it deals with Putin and Russia. Is it good advice? That's next.
My hope is that the president-elect coming in takes a similarly constructive approach, finding areas where we can cooperate with Russia, that the president-elect also is willing to stand up to Russia.
Volkswagen is announcing some job cuts. Some 30,000 positions will be slashed worldwide over 5 years. North America among the regions that will see cuts. Germany will take the brunt. Volkswagen was struggling in recent years, especially after admitting to rigging emission test results on diesel cars.
My hope is that he does not simply take a realpolitik approach and suggest that, you know, if we just cut some deals with Russia, even if it hurts people, or even if it violates international norms, or even if it leaves smaller countries vulnerable, or creates long-term problems in regions like Syria, that we just do whatever is convenient at the time.
There was a lot that came out of that press conference yesterday. President Obama's advice to his successor about Russia and Vladimir Putin. During a meeting in Germany that you just saw, Mr. Obama urging President-elect Trump to stand up to Putin. Michael Waltz, Fox News contributor, former Green Beret commander, and former counterterrorism advisor to Vice President Cheney, and the author of the book Warrior Diplomat. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in today.
Hey, thanks. Good morning.
What do you think about this advice that's being handed down? Burned by experience? What do you make of that?
Well, I find President Obama, somewhat lecturing President-elect Trump on Russia to be kind of the height of irony. I mean, we've seen under Obama's term Russia invade and take over Crimea, take over parts of Ukraine, reassert itself into the Middle East in a way that we haven't seen in 30 to 40 years, barrel bombing civilians. And just a few months ago, Obama proposed to Putin a deal in which American military officers and Russian military officers would share our most sensitive intelligence to target some of these groups. And it was a deal that the Pentagon vehemently opposed. So while I certainly have some concern about the Russians and think we should approach it with a very kind of cautious eye, I just find it coming from President Obama to be
It's a remarkable thing to see under the geopolitical